It's day 21 of the government shutdown, how what's happening in Washington, D.C. continues to impact things right here at home.
Governor Josh Green joins us live to talk about the impacts in Hawaii and what his administration plans to do about it. Spotlight Now starts now.
You're watching Spotlight Now with Ryan Kalei-Suchi and Yunji Denise on Hawaii News Now. Have questions or comments for our guests? Join the conversation in our Facebook live stream. Spotlight Now, where Hawaii comes to talk.
Well, hello, and thanks for tuning in here on this busy Tuesday. We have a lot to get to, but we want to start off by inviting all of you who are watching at home to engage in the conversation yourself. You can head over to Facebook and enter your question for our guests in the comments section, or you can also email us here at spotlightnow@hawaiinewsnow.com.
And we have some of those questions at the ready. We want to introduce our first guest, of course, Governor Josh Green, joining us now. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Want to get to what Ryan said right off the top. Day 21 of this government shutdown. How are we feeling the effects here in Hawaii? What is this costing the state, and where are you seeing the impact?
So it's a very difficult time for all the states, but I really hope that the federal government gets their act together soon and that the House and Senate come to some kind of agreement, because for every week that we are in this shutdown, we lose 0.1% of our GDP. That means every 10 weeks we lose a full percentage point of our capacity as far as our economy goes. What does that mean? That's $120 million a week in Hawaii of lost revenue. And it affects all of us. It affects, of course, most of the people that aren't getting paid. In many cases, there are still federal employees that are going to work, but they are essential, so they can't take time off, but they don't have a paycheck. We know some resources have gone to our soldiers, and we respect them so much. But that doesn't always make them whole. And then finally, it has a huge effect on our economy because, for example, restaurants are seeing far fewer people go to have a meal. And that means ultimately it's hurting that business and the staff that works there. Same can be said of hotels. There's just so many definite impacts on Hawaii. So we have to do a lot to protect our people. And you're going to start seeing the impacts really ramp up because come November 1st, we see, for example, the SNAP benefit program kind of get frozen because the SNAP cards won't work properly. We'll have to step in and help people who are food insecure, and there are many people, as you've heard from the food bank executives, that need food help. So these are real challenges for us, and we are stepping in, but we can't do everything that the federal government does. Like I said earlier, can keep us afloat structurally as a state, but I can't supplant the $10 billion that comes from the federal government every year. I can make sure our food programs stay intact. I can make sure our schools stay intact.
Well, one of those areas, as you mentioned, schools, is the University of Hawaii. They could be running into a cash flow issue because of their dependence on federal funding for this specific programs and for specific positions. Beyond the University of Hawaii and other entities that rely this heavily on the government, how do you envision they get out of this if this continues on? Because as we hear from D.C., there's seemingly no end in sight right now.
Yeah, I met with the president, who is terrific, this morning, and she was able to explain to me in the cabinet that it's hurting her to the tune of about $28 million every 2 weeks, and that's just not sustainable. So when we come back into the legislative session, we do expect to support the university with some extra monies as they keep people doing critical work employed. A lot of the work that they do, the research grants from the feds and others, are fully integrated into their operations. She has found some monies that she has expressed an availability and an ability to use going forward. She's talked to the leadership at the House and Senate, and that's good, but it is not going to be enough. They are already going to lose over $100 million in grants. Most of that was grant money that was devoted to, quote, equity grants or Hawaiian programs and research, which have been, unfortunately, terribly dismissed as valuable by the federal government. A lot of this will not get restored because we know that there's a bias at the moment from the feds. But the stuff that is workforce related, we're going to try to support her so that no one loses a job.
Okay, but the state only has so much money. So if it's $28 million of pay period, and then there are all these other effects, all these other jobs and programs that are relying on federal funding, I mean, the state can't float the whole thing. So what do you expect is going to happen?
Well, I do expect that the shutdown will end, and I think it will end sometime in November. My personal feeling is it will end sometime before Thanksgiving. I don't have a specific date, although I'm hearing a lot of chatter from the DC folks, and I am going to Washington this Thursday, Friday, and I can talk more about that in a moment. But I do think it will end because there will be incredible pressure on all of the government officials to open up before Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving is the most highly traveled weekend of the whole year. Hundreds of millions of Americans will be traveling, okay? And if we don't have TSA, if we don't have air traffic controllers in adequate numbers, that can freeze the country, and that usually provides enough pressure on the feds to open up again. Also, very importantly, is starting next week, we're going to start seeing people re-enroll in the Affordable Care Act, and they're not going to have the subsidies in place, which means that the rates could jump between 75 and 125% for people's premiums. There are 25,000 people in Hawaii, for example, that use the portal, the Affordable Care Act. That's also, the Obamacare program to get their health insurance. And that will happen all across the country, not just in Hawaii, where people will see like a doubling of their insurance costs. That's not compatible with people staying in public office. So red state, blue state, you name it, everyone's going to feel the pressure. So I do think this will end. But you're right. If the federal government stayed shut down completely, I could provide, as governor, essential services. I could keep people from going hungry. I could keep our public schools open, but I could never supplant all of the grants and all of the needs that we have. I can't suddenly employ TSA. That's not going to happen. So we are doing okay. I'll remind people we have what's called the Rainy Day Fund. We have not had to tap it in spite of what happened in Maui. We've not ever taken money from that. We have $1.58 billion right now in that, and another $175 million in the Hurricane Relief Fund. Those are resources that are available in our moments of deepest crisis. I would expect that we will tap some of those dollars. I'm imagining off the bat $200 million, and I will go through this with our legislative leaders. I've already hinted at this and begun discussions next session so that we don't ever have to cut into kind of our core function or our core monies. But all of this also means that the economy is not going to be quite as strong because of tariffs, because of the shutdown, because people are out of work. So we have a lot of variables that are hard to manage right now. So the sooner that we can get the federal government reopened, the sooner we can get people back on their health insurance, the sooner we can get people traveling and working again, the better. But I do have a contingency plan, and I will share it with you here first if you don't mind. That is that I'm going to announce formally the details about this next week, but we're going to call it the Hawaii Relief Program. I'm authorizing $100 million from what's called TANF, Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, so that people who would otherwise get food support from SNAP, food stamps, they will be able to get money here. It'll be for people up to 300% of federal poverty. That's about $90,000 for a family of four. If you've been getting federal support through SNAP, this will help you with your rent. This will help people with utility bills, and that will offset the loss of SNAP benefits for the short term. We're about to lose $60 million a month starting on November 1st from SNAP. $60 million a month. That's a $700+ million program for the state of Hawaii. Guess how big it is for California? It's $1.2 billion a month for food security in California. We're at $60 million a month. But my program will give us probably about a 2-month cushion, and we will give everyone details on how to apply for that, how to make sure they get these monies if they are in real dire straits. But that can't go on forever, and I'm really hoping, praying, and I'm going to put some pressure of my own in DC on the folks that make these decisions to reopen normal governing. And that's just important for America. This is not political. It's important for our people.
And just a quick follow-up, the timeline for that of when you believe that could begin helping people, is it something you see in a few months, immediately? What's that timeline looking like?
Real fast. So I'll be in D.C., like I said, Thursday, Friday. As soon as I get back, we will do a press conference or an announcement of some sort, giving a website where people can apply. The Department of Human Services will be managing it. We already have a manager underneath the director to get this done, and the application should turn over quite quickly. We already know who applies for SNAP funds. We already have a mechanism to get resources to people, though it's a federal mechanism, but we have a lot of communication with people already that might be somewhere on the edge. So we will do it quickly. We hope to get the monies to people within a week or two so that they know that they can, say, have their rent monies covered for that month, so they can then make sure they can afford food for their children.
So sorry, go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, I just want to ask about this upcoming trip to DC, and in a lot of the conversations that we're hearing. I mean, this didn't come to a surprise to many people, this government shutdown, because of just how divided the country seems. You say you're going to DC, of course, a Democratic governor, a Republican in office, and we actually had a question from Courtney that comes in saying, are you worrying about the erratic, vindictive Trump canceling funds earmarked for Hawaii during this time? So any further funds that could be going up. Your thoughts overall about the politics that's in D.C. and the relationship with the Trump administration and any pushback we may get as a state for being a Democratic state?
Yes, that's a great question and a relevant one in every way. Look, I've taken the position that I will not allow partisan politics to affect my relationships with anybody, Democrat or Republican or independent, at the federal level. I have a deep disagreement, as does that caller, a deep disagreement with the administration on things like immigration policies, on the way they've been making cuts, the DOGE, practices. But I'm also fighting very hard to let them know that Hawaii, which has a big military presence, which has big needs in terms of social services, can't be pushed aside. And so because there's a bit of tension that exists, that they have needs from us and we have needs from them, I look past the anger and I go and meet with directors, and I'll be meeting with the Secretary of Transportation, the CMS director, the EPA team and director, the Energy Secretary, our senators. I will be meeting with the Secretary of the Army and so on, all next or later this week, in fact, to explain what our needs are. They have asks from us. We'll probably need to talk a little bit more about this back and forth we're having about the military bases. But because of that, Hawaii has remained in a position where they're not taking extra from us. In fact, we are in line to probably get a very large community benefits package, provided that I am at least demonstrating some respectful process. It's hard, and I know it's hard for people to imagine. It's important that I not lose my cool, because if the Army goes forward with condemnation of the military bases, and I can't stop it legally, if that happens, I'm insisting that they make us whole and then some on our needs, on energy needs. I'm asking for well over $1 billion in energy support. I'm asking for the consideration for over $1 billion in housing. We're asking for a lot of money to protect and help remediate the unexploded ordinances in Makua Valley and so on. We stand to do very well as a state financially. I'm also fighting for extra monies for health, $250 million a year for Medicare increases. And I have that capacity. I'm just trying to be very blunt and open with people here on your program. If the military wanted to, they could move unilaterally and take lands from us for national security purposes. However, as long as I have a rapport with these directors on some level, we should see some kind of balance. And to her question, that's what I'm approaching my role as someone who can work with both sides. But look, it's tough. It's tough because if I had my way, we would just go through the regular process, do the environmental processes, the bases would be assessed, and we would extend the leases as we had always planned. But I don't think they have the patience for that, and also they do have the legal capacity to take the land.
And I hear what you're saying, but I'm looking in the comments and just a little flavor is saying basically that the governor is giving stolen lands to the military. That's the accusation, and that is the view of some of the people in the community.
Let me set them straight, okay? Whatever any governor would like to do right now, the most liberal, the most pro-Hawaiian, and I'm a very pro-Hawaiian governor, okay? My wife is Hawaiian. I'm working on Hawaiian homelands like no one ever saw before. No matter what any governor wanted to do, the administration has the legal capacity. We've checked it out. They have the legal capacity to condemn the lands. We would rebel. We would be upset if it happened without any kind of compensation. We would object, all of us. They can legally do it. And unfortunately, that is reality. No matter what I do, However, if we stand back and don't try to figure out a way to get energy dollars, to get housing dollars, to get healthcare dollars, we will lose an opportunity that will not come back to us again. And it is just our reality. It's my job to deal with the realities that come to the executive branch. And so that's why I'm meeting with them. I empathize with anybody who's saying just don't do it. If I went that way, that pathway, took that road, what would happen? We would lose our bases, we would protest vehemently, and then we would get nothing. And we would still end up in a circumstance where we don't have the capacity to control that land. I do intend to get 12,000 acres back if they go this route. I do intend to have Makua Valley returned to us and remediated. I do intend to have billions of dollars to come to help protect our environment and to go to Hawaiian lands to build homes for the Hawaiian community that has been treated so badly. I will do those things, but I will not be able to do them if we don't have someone, which is me in this case, fighting on our behalf. That's the reality.
There was a sense of urgency about these negotiations, hoping that this would be settled by the end of the year. Do you foresee an agreement coming through by the end of the year where this will be resolved and where something that you are agreeable to and the military is agreeable to could ultimately be reached? Is that a realistic timeline?
Well, I, in a way, will never be agreeable to it, although I may have no choice but to, accept the consequences of the superior position that the federal government holds over any state. Having said that, it could very well happen before the end of the year. It's not clear to me that the Department of Justice is capable of getting the documentation that they had hoped to get done in time because there's this government shutdown, which is surreal. I am trying to push it out so that we have more time to get input. I did want to remind people that we've had the site engagehawaii.gov for people to give me their input of what they want me to fight for, and we're getting tons of ideas. As I can tell you, I'm putting directly in the face of these secretaries of health and housing and so on and so forth. It could happen this year, and if it does, I'm going to fight like hell for these resources for our people, for this next generation. I'm not sure, though, and I think it's evident that this particular administration is on occasion quite mercurial. I mean, they go into a challenge and they do something and then they pull back. And all I can say is that's my balancing act every day. I will fight for these resources. I will tell you there's other things I'm doing. For example, KS got sued. As you know, I have made sure that a top attorney or two are now engaged with KS, people that I know that have the capacity to directly engage with the Attorney General Bondi, and the President, people that know those folks very well. I've made sure that we are armed in Hawaii with people that can make the argument to protect KS. So behind the scenes, day in and day out, I'm having conversations with people that can navigate this administration. And to a degree, I can also. I don't let it get personal, with one exception, which is RFK Jr., okay? That's because kids are getting measles or pertussis or someday worse. But setting that one example aside, which I do take quite personally, I'm trying to stay very even about how I deal with these guys because, I'll say it one more time, I don't want the federal government to act unilaterally and do a taking. I don't want them to condemn our lands. I want them to go through the regular process. But I have heard from them directly that they intend to take the opportunity because of national security concerns to put this into motion. And therefore, I'm asking for up to $10 billion of compromise. Otherwise, they would probably only have to come in with something between $15 and $20 million. A tiny fraction, because the actual value of those lands, if they're condemned, is very small. These are lands that have been deeply damaged and wounded by bombings. They don't have any real value. They have incredible cultural value, but they don't have any value on paper. And so we could lose out terribly. So I'm trying to respect OHA's wishes, DHHL's wishes, the community's wishes, especially on Big Island, and find a way to really benefit us if this happens.
I want to go back to Kamehameha Schools. There was a protest, of course, at Iolani Palace today, but you have a private individual suing a private estate, right?
Yes.
This is not a government lawsuit of any kind. What will the state take a formal position or a formal role in these proceedings?
It's not likely. I did talk to our Attorney General briefly, and we've had some info. It's likely this will be a private matter. However, because of the relationships that I have, I know some of the top attorneys in the country that have worked in a space that could clearly argue that Kamehameha schools should be protected, that their private decisions are protected in this case for Native Hawaiian students. And I'm not a lawyer, so I will let the lawyers make the arguments, but I also made sure that they have attorneys that have had deep relationships with the Attorney General and the President before, so that they can make the case very clearly that Kamehameha schools should be protected in its admissions and policy prerogatives. Again, this is not a state issue, so I'm here fighting mostly for like University of Hawaii, keep our grants. We did keep a lot of grants early when they were accusing different states of anti-Semitism. We kept $600 million of funding when others lost it. We've had some wins, and we're going to have more wins. But unfortunately, that's the dynamic right now. It's a very combative dynamic at times with the federal government, and that's what's had me going back and forth to D.C. to meet with these secretaries of energy and the Army and health and so on, to see if I can keep it calm and get really good outcomes for Hawaii. We are getting a great outcome, for example, from the Department of Health and Human Services on rural health care. That was a victory. That's the $50 billion, which I mentioned once before. $50 billion is now going to the states. $10 billion a year for 5 years. Each state's getting at least $100 million per year. We will get about $200 million, we believe, per year, to deal with the challenges to rural hospitals, to help providers go and work in rural areas, to use new technologies to help make sure we could stay on Medicaid. All these things, that is an example. That was a $50 billion set of conversations I had with Department of Health and Human Services and some of the Senate leadership, both sides, Republicans and Democrats, which resulted in a win in that bill that the administration put forward. If I didn't do anything, the healthcare system in the country would have been out $50 billion.
You mentioned the Health and Human Services Director as one of those individuals who maybe you disagree with the most. He has once again come under a lot of attention, RFK Jr. has, about his comments regarding vaccines and vaccinations. There seems to be a lot of confusion over the claims that he's making. As someone who has butted heads with him, who has challenged him on some of what he's saying, what are your views on the latest he's giving information on things linked to things like autism?
So I feel very strongly that the Secretary of Health and Human Services, Mr. Kennedy, is wrong. About 80% of Americans feel the same way as I do on vaccinations, and it's reflected in how quickly people are turning against his ideas on this fundamental question of prevention. This will be the reason he ultimately is removed from the secretary position, and I hope he does other work on chronic disease and nutrition. I will support him in those areas, but he has caused irreparable harm already to the confidence we have in vaccination programs. And you notice he hasn't said much in the last couple of weeks. I think he is in the doghouse with the president because a lot of people are upset. His comments about autism were reckless. The connections to Tylenol have not been validated with good science. I even have a friend of mine who confided in me today that they are a few weeks pregnant. They're 16 or 17 weeks pregnant, and they were asking me questions even about Tylenol and the use that they might have had a couple months ago. So that was reckless. He connected it to all sorts of things, right? And maybe they're not even okay for a family show to be describing. So I think he'll be gone, and I think ultimately it's likely that he'll move into a different space. And in that case, I think Dr. Oz will be one of the candidates to run the Department of Health and Human Services. I am seeing Oz on Thursday at 10:30 in the morning, and we're going through these things. And even though I'm in a direct antagonism with the Secretary of Health, we did meet for almost an hour. We did talk passionately but respectfully about some of these concerns. It's just, this one is so fundamental, That's why we had to actually form the Western Governors Healthcare Alliance, and why we have a National Governors Health Alliance, which are giving best practices and best recommendations to the country, which mostly are the same as we always had with the American Academy of Pediatrics and the infectious disease experts in the country. We have the best people that have ever worked in public health in America on these panels and these groups to help guide us. And I'm hoping that calmer, cooler heads prevail, because this is not even good for the president or the administration, certainly not good for America when you have outbreaks of measles. Wait until it's polio and people are paralyzed again. Wait until you see a bird flu outbreak that kills people like COVID killed when we had the Delta variant of COVID. I mean, there will be no forgiving the Secretary of Health at that point. And I'm going to go to D.C. and if I even have an opportunity to see his chief of staff or even the president, which has happened from time to time for me, I will convey my willingness to help, but my strong opinion that they should have experts in these areas. That's what America needs.
I want to go back to the $60 million a month that we're going to potentially lose with SNAP benefits.
Yes.
That is the total amount of SNAP benefits that our state is getting. Is that right?
That's right.
And so of that, how much on November 1st do you think we're going to lose? Not the full $60 million.
Oh, the cards could all become frozen. Yes.
So we could lose the full $60 million overnight.
It is possible.
And your program, $120 million, you said will float us for 2 months.
Sorry, 110
million.
$110 million, and it will be, meant to immediately plug this hole.
And it was this is just for clarity, because this is a lot of money. This is a lot of people that could potentially be hurt. The $60 million is only frozen if the government shutdown continues, because we also know that some of those SNAP benefits are threatened because of federal, differences in the federal government's initiatives and priorities.
Yes, that's right. So, look, not everybody suffers equally, but what happens is in a program like SNAP, which is fully federally funded, and it's also got its mechanisms where the SNAP cards are on federal systems. These SNAP cards, I'm told, could stop working on November 1st. Everybody, from what I'm hearing, could be vulnerable that's on SNAP. Therefore, we have to find a way first to get extra funding to the food bank. So what we're doing is we have that $50 million that the legislature was very thoughtful about appropriating. That's these grants that we're giving to nonprofits. They are now accelerating that work. They have the application deadline of this Friday. They've already gotten 79 applications, 10 completed, but 79 are in the works. I can guarantee you that the Hawaii Food Bank is going to be one of the priority organizations, working through the Aloha United Way. So we will be able to get some money from that $50 million straight to the food banks. Let's say there's an elderly individual that doesn't have any dependent children that is, on SNAP. They'll be able to go to the food bank and get a lot of extra support so they don't go hungry. But this $100 million, and it's the first $100 million, will be available if the federal government continues to fail us. And if they do fail us for, month over month, I'll have to come up with more money. We will be in the legislative session in January. You can be sure that people will be compassionate from the House and Senate to make sure that we use rainy day funds if people are going hungry, if after school programs are not funded, if we are losing access to essential healthcare services or public safety services. That's the kind of thing that we'll be funding right away. This is why I say I can keep us alive and I can navigate these 2 years where you have imbalance in government because you only have one political ideology running things, and you have an administration that's quite tough and throwing some pretty tough pitches, like pitches that right at people's heads right now. We have to have some balance in government, and I can get us through the necessary survival pieces of government, but I would not be able to support the whole university or all of what we need. That's a part of why it's so important that we not just disengage from the federal government. Can you imagine if I just, gave them a unpleasant hand gesture and then said, do what you want, we'll just sue you. We lose in court over, say, the public lands, the federal bases, because let's be honest, the military is a significant presence in Hawaii. I know some people will write they have to go away completely. That's just not going to happen, okay? We're going to have a relationship, a partnership. Many of these people are Ohana. Many people have lived their lives here. We will have a presence, but it can be a smaller footprint. It can be a less impactful footprint. We can get monies to help clean up old sites, but if I just walked away, we would lose somewhere between $5 and $10 billion of opportunity to help us with food, to help us with schools, to help us with housing. These are the big issues that we've been talking about for a couple of years. That is how I approach this. Will we win every battle? No. But we're actually winning a surprising number of these battles, unlike some other states where they throw a sharp elbow because they're very upset. And I understand. If they were sending the National Guard into Honolulu, I'd probably be upset beyond measure. I probably would have a difficult time holding my temper. But I've also made clear that we can handle very well our needs, and there is no need for military here. So let's not have that conflict. Let's have a proper discussion about the bases, about food security. I probably could get even better deals, but I'm not going to undercut other governors. I'm just going to do what I think is right for Hawaii, consistent with our values. That's also consistent with the promises I've made as governor for the last several years.
Well, the state has just opened up $50 million in grants for nonprofits, many of whom are suffering because of this shutdown. What do you want these nonprofits to know about the support that could be coming through this program that's opening up, and what you foresee other help being provided for those who are providing these critical services in our community?
It will be expedited now. Please get your applications in by Friday. I don't foresee an extension because they want to get this hearing done before Thanksgiving and get these monies out. We already have finished the contract. It's in place between our Department of Labor and the Aloha United Way. We will be ready to get the money out before the new year to those who need it, so they don't have to lay people off, so there's extra money for those who are struggling. I will be honored to renew another $50 million if the legislature sees fit. And we'll do that right away, too, if we have this kind of need. So you've got that grant and aid program. This is the special one where federal cuts occurred. You have the regular grant and aid program, which is just ongoing, which happens every year. Now you're going to potentially have this community benefits package, which could help us in a lot of interesting ways. So that's how we're navigating this circumstance. And then finally, I'm going to put $100 million into the Hawaii Relief Program based on the need. I really hope we don't need it. I hope that they can stop this shutdown. I suspect that because it's affecting the military and because it's going to be affecting people who are hungry, that they will see that some of the legislators have a heart on both sides of the aisle and that they will pull back and cut a deal. But currently the impasse has been over a fundamental policy question, which is the Affordable Care Act. So they have to somehow work out an understanding, a modest extension of that, a guaranteed vote to extend it and do appropriations bills in turn for reopening the government. That's what civilized people would do, which is say, okay, let's set aside our differences. Let's extend maybe for a year at least. I'm not the negotiator, but maybe a year at least on the subsidies for the Affordable Care Act. Let's get past the next election cycle. Let the people decide what our values are and open the government. Because if we're losing $120 million per week in Hawaii, that means California is losing about 25 times that. That's basically the number. It also means that the country is losing about 250 times that every week in overall economic activity. And I'll tell you right now, places like China are laughing at us because they see us destroying ourselves. And there's going to be other things we need to do. We're going to have to take up the reconstruction in part of these war-ravaged parts of the world. We're going to have to somehow come down off of inflation. And it's going to be real hard if we set ourselves into a recession. So I can, like I said, I can protect our core needs with our rainy day fund and our budget, which is fine. But I can't solve all the problems that the federal government causes. So I'll keep going and I'll keep trying to negotiate things. But I would hope, and this is an appeal I make to people who would say, hey, just don't deal with them. Tell the government to shove it when it comes to the bases. Tell them we have no interest in being a part of America. We don't have that luxury. I don't have that luxury. I would see 1.4 million of our people suffer terribly, and the kids would suffer the worst. So that's why I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing.
Michelle Bartell is here from Aloha United Way. She's going to give us the nuts and bolts of that $50 million.
Yes.
We are out of time, but just very briefly before you go, usually on this program, there's some time for light fare and we kind of have a good time, but I feel that you're in a very fighting spirit right now.
Yeah. I am. I mean, I'm fighting for us. Some of it's fun. I went to Japan and we went to Okinawa and did a giant tug of war to increase our relationship with Okinawa, and we did an environmental program with them, a 5-year extension of renewables. We signed a deal with JIRA to do some LNG work to match our solar and wind. That's going to help us in lower energy costs. I'm doing all that stuff. But the biggest needs we have right now are for me to be a firm governor that's willing to work with everybody within the confines of our values and come out okay at the other end of this. And so I'll go and fight. I'm going to fight for healthcare. I'm going to fight for food security, and we will be okay. The drama that you see on TV is extraordinary. Our capacity is great. And I believe that people are looking to Hawaii and seeing that we did better than most on some of the big crises. Better on the wildfire, better on COVID, and we're going to do better on the shutdown than anybody else. But it's still going to hurt a little. And so that's what I'd like to convey. I will come back and report on this trip and how it went, if that would help, if that would please people. But I want people to know that there's a lot of work going into this moment.
Okay, well, thank you so much for being here. We'll see you on the other side of the trip. We'll see you on the other side of the break with Michelle Bartell from Aloha United Way. You're watching Spotlight Now.
Hello and welcome back to Spotlight Now. We again want to encourage those of you who may be watching us to enter your questions and comments for the guests on Facebook, or you can email us at spotlightnow@hawaiinewsnow.com.
We want to welcome in Michelle Bartell, CEO of Aloha United Way. Michelle, the governor, well, first of all, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
And we want to get right to it because the governor did talk about this big deadline that's happening on Friday. This is Act 310, $50 million that the legislature set aside for nonprofits. AUW is the administrator, is my understanding. Tell us a little bit about this money. Where's it going and who's it for?
Yeah, so the $50 million was appropriated by the legislature this last legislative session, and it was really intended to be emergency funding for nonprofits that have been impacted by the federal funding uncertainty, and really primarily federally qualified health centers, and nonprofits that are working in childcare, education, housing, shelter, essential services. But not only for those organizations, but also for organizations that have been indirectly impacted, which is also, as you heard the governor talk about, the ripple effects of what's going on in the federal government are enormous. And so we did open up the application process. Aloha United Way was brought in to help administer the application and the contracting and the payment of funds. So we're working very, very closely with the state, of course, with OCS in the Department of Labor. And I just want to make sure to note that the actual funding decisions are made by the Selection and Evaluation Committee, which is made up of 4 legislators. What we did was we took a very close look at the existing GIA application, and that's Hawaii Revised Statutes 42F. We really wanted to, it was important because 42F is named in the bill, that the entire process really mirror that. And so we have done that as much as possible. But of course, in the interest of expediency, we took a look at how could we use technology to make that process a lot more seamless, easier on the nonprofits, with the goal of expediency. So it's now an online application. That did go live last Monday, October 13th at 10 a.m. And so far, actually, it's been working very, very well. So less than 24 hours later, or just about 24 hours later, we held an informational webinar, and that was attended by over 330 folks who were, so that tells you the need right there, right? If in 24 hours we had that kind of interest with very little lead time, that really shows that nonprofits have been waiting for this and have responded. So we did do a recording of that webinar. It's available on AW's website. There's also a very detailed guidebook that takes nonprofits through step by step. We're really trying to make this as easy of a process as possible, but I recognize it is a lot of work, this application, because there's a very tight turnaround. So applications are due, as Governor mentioned, this week, Friday, October 24th, 4:30 p.m. We're not going to be accepting any late applications. We're happy to see that we've gotten 10 completed applications and a lot more interest, and we expect that a lot of folks are probably busily working on their applications as we speak, and we do hope that they will all be able to take advantage of it.
Well, we know that this is, of course, just one of the vehicles that Aloha United Way is doing to help our community. Beyond this, because this is a very important service that you're working with the state on, I imagine that as we talk about the government shutdown, as we talk about some of these other fundings, your other services like 211, these other critical services that you provide, may also be extremely busy right now. Can you just tell us about what you're feeling and what you're hearing from the sense of the community, not only from the nonprofits that are applying for this, but just generally as a whole?
Right. Yeah, thank you for recognizing that. We've got a lot of other work going on at Aloha United Way. So yes, we administer 211, which is the statewide helpline. We have seen a modest increase in phone calls, and we track that very closely because that really is real-time data on community need. We also track unmet needs, and the alarming thing is that we do see those unmet needs are tracking up a little bit. So we do keep a very close eye on that. We encourage our nonprofits to make sure that all of their listings are totally up to date so that we can make sure we're providing resources to folks who are calling for it. And then, of course, we have Workplace Giving campaign going on right now, and that is a wonderful opportunity for the general public to really step up. If they're in a position to support our nonprofits, this is a wonderful way for them to do so, to be able to support many all at once. And AUW does pass through any agency designations like that 100%. We don't take any fee. That's part of our mission.
We heard the governor say a possibility of another $50 million. This first tranche of money, how fast do you expect it to go? And given how much need we have, is it capable of fulfilling everything we need? I would imagine not.
Definitely not. So we did see from the UHERO study that was released a couple of weeks ago that potentially $126 million in direct federal funding is at risk. There are many more indirect impacts, right? It's those ripple effects we've been talking about, especially when you consider the fact that the federal government is such a large funder in the ecosystem. And when one funder makes dramatic shifts in their giving, it causes enormous pressure on the entire ecosystem, right? We've already seen that funders, private philanthropy, is looking at, maybe shifting some of their giving, and rightfully so. But at the same time, then it causes everyone, whether they are a nonprofit that currently has direct federal funding or not, it causes impacts on the entire system.
All right, well, before we let you go one more time, just if you can, again, if there may be nonprofits out there who are watching this, who have questions, who want to apply, just a quick, again, reminder of what they need to do for this process.
Sure. Well, they can get a lot of information online at capital.hawaii.gov. There are links right at the top in the big yellow banner for them to go navigate directly to the application. They can go to AUW's website. We have a lot of really robust resources. Like I mentioned, there's a webinar recording, there's a step-by-step guidebook, and really robust FAQs to try and guide folks through that. If there's technical questions, they can email stategrants@auw.org, or they can contact OCS directly if they have questions about general eligibility. So we do hope that everybody does take advantage, and we hope that there might be another opportunity in the new legislative session for another $50 million. So that was exciting to hear the governor talk about that.
Okay, Michelle, thank you so much for being here today and for all that you do for our community. We appreciate it.
Thanks.
We'll be right back after this. You're watching Spotlight Now.
From the moment you wake up.
Hawaii News Now brings you the stories that impact your day.
With more on the breaking news, we go live to Casey Lund.
Ready with the push alert? I'm going live. We have an update to the breaking news we brought you this morning on Sunrise.
Okay, guys, as soon as this wraps, toss to Mahia.
And we've been covering this story all day.
Now we go live to Mahia for a new development.
Stand by for breaking news. They just captured the suspect.
That's confirmed?
Yes, sources just confirmed it.
The news you need the moment it breaks.
Here on Hawaii News Now.
First alert traffic is like always having a helpful passenger right next to you.
There's a crash up ahead in the left lane.
When we see a backup, we'll tell you live on TV.
That doesn't look too good.
And send an alert to your phone.
I'll type, you drive.
First alert traffic on TV, streaming, and on the Hawaii News Now app.
Keeping you and your ohana safe.
Well, welcome back to Spotlight Now. We are now entering our Community Spotlight segment, where we're going to be speaking to a representative from Hawaii Pacific Health, a sponsor of this program, as we learn more about what they're doing in our community.
Yeah, and we are so pleased. This is going to be an ongoing segment, and we're so happy to start it here. Michael Robinson is here, Vice President of Government Relations and Community Affairs for HPH. Thanks for being here today.
Great. No, thank you for having me.
So interesting to hear today. We've been talking a lot about community need, and we know that so much of the national conversation has been about healthcare. Tell us a little bit about how, what's happening in the community and that larger conversation impacts your work at Hawaii Pacific Health, specifically when it comes to, keeping people healthy outside of the hospital.
Sure, happy to. Thank you for that question. So at Hawaii Pacific Health, our mission is to create a healthier Hawaii. And part of that is an understanding that we embrace the concept that what constitutes health in an individual, 80% of that has to do with factors that have outside of clinical care. So it's things like education and access to housing and economic status and all of the things that we heard this morning that are at threat. So as part of that, we've embraced the concept of working outside of our four walls and focus specifically in the areas of local hiring, local food sourcing, and local investment. So the programs that we have been championing and developed are really an understanding of a way we view our role as a healthcare provider really has to be in that preventative space and what we call working upstream before a person has an encounter. And we realize that all of those other factors have a much greater impact, both before a patient sees us and afterwards when it's post-discharge. Those are the programs that I'd be happy to talk about.
Well, let's talk a little bit about one of those areas, and that's really the investment in local food and just the overall sustainability of the islands. It's something that we continue to hear in discussions when we talk about Hawaii's long-term future, as it relates to, just not only the supply chain, food supply chain, but also, as you said, health-wise overall. Why do you think it's important for Hawaii Pacific Health to encourage just buying local, and in what ways are you folks trying to encourage that amongst local residents?
Sure. Yeah, it was really sobering this morning listening to, what the great work that the governor's trying to do, and as well as my colleague at AUW. And, local purchasing is something that we put at the forefront to really enhance local food systems. So on the one hand, you can think of it as, us being much more intentional about who we purchase from. Because there's a lot of side benefits to that too, right? It's not only getting locally grown food access to us more easily, but it's also with recognition of the fact that if you look at the agricultural sector here in Hawaii, it's made up of really a bunch of small family businesses. It's about 80%, we understand, are Alice households, which are making probably $25,000 or less as kind of a side hustle to do this. So if we are working with partners that help aggregate those types of growers that are occurring on a small scale, and they are responsible largely to ensure that it's the quality and supply that we need as a healthcare provider. And the work that we're doing with our partners, we're hoping will get money back into the hands of our local economy, ensure local access, and I think over the long run will help us transform the healthcare delivery system so that the food that we're growing here locally, because you have an institutional purchase, the pricing of that will start to, that's really what they need is a reliable purchaser that they can count on when you put seed into ground. And that's the role that we hope to do and are doing through the work that we do in this space.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about what that institutional partner looks like. We are talking about hospital cafeterias or the food that you get, when you're in a clinic, or how does that actually work, and how much food are we talking about?
Sure. So we actually have instituted in our organization a 50% purchase local in protein and agriculture, and that is a goal that we have for each one of our hospitals that's part of our system. That's Kapiolani Medical Center, Palimomi Medical Center, Straw-Benioff, as well as Wilcox Medical Center on Kauai. And so each of our food purchasers, they know that it's a goal that we have. It's shared throughout the system, and we measure this monthly. And it's really about intentional purchasing, right? If we have an opportunity to buy a product and it's locally grown and available to the standards that we require, we will go that route. So far, we have had all of our hospitals have met that goal. This is about our third year of doing that, and we've actually increased that goal now from 50% to 55% to challenge ourselves to do more. And I think all the relationships that we've made through that, and Hawaii Food Bank for sure is one of those. And I also want to give a special shout out for FarmLink Hawaii, which has been an amazing partner with us in getting foods directly to people's homes. And another organization that is in that same vein is Malama Kauai, which is the same thing for us in a large extent on the island of Kauai. They're food aggregators that helps us purchase directly and ensure the quality standards that we require.
When you think about just healthcare as a whole, and when you talk about Hawaii Pacific Health, you may not think agriculture and food,
right.
But by drawing this connection, it's really showing the importance and investment that HPH is making into growing locally and supporting these local farmers. What has been the feedback from the farming community and just from people who have now within your hospitals have been eating this local food? Are you seeing some of the results already?
Yeah, we are. If you think about it, we have over 1 million patient encounters on the outpatient side. So the opportunity when it's linked with a healthcare provider providing this, and we screen for, or we work with our medical partners to check for food insecurity with our patients. So every single patient that is admitted to our facility works with our medical team to see if there are signs of food insecurity there. If there is, we've developed a system that we just launched in certain parts of our facilities that will help get that food directly to that patient. Now, the outcomes of that, we're going to begin to start to evaluate that, but the fact that we've gotten this far where we can link an individual patient's need in the area of food access and then provide them a warm handoff and a connectivity with one of these food hubs, we are anticipating we'll be able to measure and capture, some of the wellness benefits that are going to come from that. I can say that most of the farmers that we wind up contracting with probably don't know, which is totally fine that we are part of this. But again, we have such good relationships with our food hub partners that they understand what we're trying to do, and we've worked collaboratively with each other to get to where we are today.
That's such an interesting approach because, I talked to Amy Miller, CEO of the food bank, and she says one of the things in Hawaii that we don't realize is how many people are food insecure and that there's so much shame around food insecurity.
Yeah.
And so I'd imagine as a healthcare provider, when someone walks through your doors, that you can see that, this illness may be related to a food issue. So it's really almost like the hospital is social worker. It's such an interesting way to approach it.
No, that's right. And what we've heard from the studies, right, that AUW has put out, about 30% of the population is food insecure. And what's frightening, we've heard and seen this even before the pandemic. So if you were to look to where we are today, and especially with what's going on federally right now, we're going to most likely see that number increase. I think the other piece about having a healthcare provider is we're in a privileged position to have really thoughtful conversations with individuals as a healthcare provider, and I think having the additional weight of a physician or a healthcare perspective in a consult to understand what's going on with the patient and have resources available to them, I think adds another point of contact for that individual to get the access that they need.
Well, we are almost out of time. What would you want just the general community to know about this program, and not only that, but just the work that HPH is doing to provide support for these areas, and generally just trying to live up to that slogan of leading a healthier and creating a better, healthier Hawaii?
Sure. I would say for the individuals and families that are working in agriculture, just to know that I strongly recommend that they work with the Food Hub network that's in their community, whether it's FarmLink or Malama Kauai, whoever that is. That's really been our kind of point of contact, is through the Food Hub folks. And I think, Yunji, to your point, just to know that, this is something that there shouldn't be any shame around, being in a situation where food insecurity is there. It's unfortunate that it is, but, having patience and just people in the community just be aware of it. It could be your neighbor next door. It could be people that you're working with. It's something that's very real, and we're really happy to be in a place to be able to move the needle on this.
Yeah, well, thank you for opening up that conversation, and it's such an interesting approach. We really appreciate it. Thanks for telling us about it. Michael Robinson here from Hawaii Pacific Health. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next week here on Spotlight Now, we are going to be focusing in with a different governor. Governor Ige will be joining us.
That's right. He's going to be providing us an update on some of the things that he's working on and just give his viewpoints on what he sees in this current administration, and as a governor that has had to work with the Trump administration as well, what he's learned from working with the president.
Yeah, very interesting to hear today's guest, Governor Josh Green, talking about his upcoming trip to Washington, D.C., all of the things that he's battling. You hear it with the shutdown and what it's costing the state, $120 million a week. Is that right, he said, or a month? I'm forgetting now, but it was a lot of money. And thinking on the land leases and all of the negotiations that he is having to have.
Yeah, a very passionate conversation that we had with Governor Josh Green. We encourage you, if you missed any portion of that, you can head over to hawaiinewsnow.com. And remember, you can always email us your questions for our guests at spotlightnow@hawaiinewsnow.com. We'd love to hear from you and hear who you think should be one of our guests. We'll see you right back here next week for another episode of Spotlight Now. Aloha.